Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the FPCI Public Forum organized with Huawei Tech Investment, titled Towards a More Digitized ASEAN, Shifting Currents, Opportunities, and Challenges in Time of Pandemic. Live from Bengkel Diplomacy, FPCI. Against the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic, the discussion will explore the importance of digitalization in the region and how we should push forward a more digitized ASEAN community. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us today in our discussion are a number of distinguished panelists. His Excellency, Dr. Aladin Dolorito Rilo, Deputy Secretary General for ASEAN Economic Community. Welcome, Your Excellency. His Excellency, Dr. Rizal Afandi Lukman, Deputy Minister for International Economic Cooperation, Indonesian Coordinating Ministry for Economic Affairs. Welcome, Your Excellency. His Excellency Odo Manuhutu, Deputy Coordinating Minister for Tourism and Creative Economy, Indonesian Coordinating Ministry for Maritime and Investment Affairs. Welcome. Dr. Jayant Menon, a visiting senior fellow at Regional Economic Studies Program of ASEAS Yusof Ishak Institute, Singapore, and former lead economist of Asian Development Bank. Welcome. Lastly, Mr. Sam Cheng Chin Chin, Principal of Digital Transformation, Public and Government Affairs, Huawei. This public forum will be moderated by Ms. Dayu Nirma Amurwanti, faculty member of the International Relations Department at Binus University. The 2-hour public forum will begin with welcome remarks by Dr. Dino Patijalal, founder and chairman of Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, followed by opening remarks from Mr. Jai Chen, Vice President of Huawei Asia Pacific. So to Dr. Dino, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Hannah. And before I begin, I would like to say hello to Mr. Jay Chen, Dr. Aladin Rilo, Dr. Rizal Afandi Lukman, my good friend, also another good friend, Mr. Odo Manuhutu, Dr. Jayant Menon, and Sam Cheng from Huawei, and of course the moderator, Ms. Dayu Lima Amurwanti. I want to welcome everybody who is joining us today in this quite interesting forum. People are joining us not just from Indonesia, but also from around the region, and I trust we're going to have a very good discussions about the future of digitized ASEAN. You know, if you ask me what is the future of ASEAN, you know, you will get different answers. The future can be cashless or less cash. The future can be AI. The future can be low carbon. But definitely the future is digital. And our experience with COVID-19 crisis this year has really awakened us to this fact and has really pushed us to become even more digital. I speak here as also a COVID survivor, and I remember laying in a hospital for about 2 weeks, and I swear I spent nearly 12 to 16 hours a day on my iPad, on my phone, on my computer. Right? So I've never been so digitally exposed as I was during that time. But I think what our experience this year with COVID-19 and the digital world is that it reveals a great deal of gap, digital gap. In ASEAN, we still have about 250 million people who don't have access to internet. And the digital gap follows economic gap, which means what? People who don't have access to the internet or have limited access are people who come from different economic ladder, right? And that is a cause of concern. I'm also a member of the Indonesian Lecturers Association, and one of the most common complaints that we get from lecturers and students is that they just don't have the money to pay for access to online education at such long hours. And the digital gap also follows geographical pattern, which means the farther you are, the more remote you are, the less likely you are able to have online access, right? These are things that were revealed more obviously during the COVID-19 crisis this year. And it means three things. It means that we need to have more digital literacy, we need to have more digital access, and we need to have more digital infrastructure. And I think for me as an educator, it is very important, because if we get these things right, we can actually achieve the long time vision of having emancipation of education, for example. I live in a country where the quality and access of education that you get, depending on where you live, right? Depending on what kind of family you belong to, and so on, right? But if you can fix and develop the digital divide, you can actually get or reach emancipation of education a lot sooner than otherwise. And not just emancipation of education, you can also get a lot more economic empowerment, especially for the small and medium enterprise, and you can get improved governance and bureaucracy by way of digital embrace, right? So that's our challenge. I'm sure we can reach those goals despite difficulties and roadblocks that will be discussed during the discussions. The most important for me would be the harmonization of regulation. I think whatever vision that we have for a digitized ASEAN, I think the key challenge, as always, will always be in the regulation sphere. How do you harmonize regulations among the 10 ASEAN countries? I think once we sort this out, we can make progress in leaps and bounds. So I want to wish everybody a good discussions. I want to thank everybody, all the speakers, for joining us today. Feel free to speak your mind, and I look forward to hearing this very interesting discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dino Patijalal. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Jai Chun for his opening remarks. Mr. Chun, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Dino, for you hosting this forum and giving us this very warmly opening speech. And Your Excellency, Dr. Aladdin Reno, the Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN, and Dr. Rizal Afandi Lukman, Deputy Minister of Indonesian Coordinating Ministry for Economic Affairs, and Adu Manuhutu, Deputy Minister of Indonesian Coordinating Ministry for Maritime and Investment Affairs, and Dr. Jayant Mano, and Mr. Sam Chinchinjui. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's my honor to provide some opening remarks at this event. The year 2020 has been a challenging year. Every person, business, and organization has been affected by the COVID-19. If there is one clear message as we leave 2020, it is that we now live with our one foot in a physical world and another in a digital world. And our reliance on that digital community is increasing. Reliable and ubiquitous connectivity has become a pillar of digital infrastructure, emphasized even more as a result of the pandemic. Data shows countries were positioned with digital infrastructure can mitigate as much as half of the negative impact due to the pandemic. And this same infrastructure will play a critical role in substantial recovery, including reducing our carbon footprint and improving our ecosystem. This digital world is not the domain of any one country. It eliminates borders, it reaches the unreachable, and it improves the lives of everyone involved through communication, education, and opportunity. The Master Plan on ASEAN Connectivity 2025 will help strengthen the connectivities among ASEAN members and drive digital development with a focus on 5 key areas. First one is sustainable infrastructure, digital innovation, seamless logistics, regulatory excellence, and people mobility. As a leading global provider of ICT infrastructure and smart devices, we are from Huawei dedicated to working with our global partners to support ASEAN in these areas. We believe leveraging knowledge, technology, and data, MPEC 2025 will help synchronize ASEAN member countries' digital transformation efforts to accelerate the regional economy and realize its pursuit of Industry 4.0. It will lead the region into the future and open doors for ASEAN to solidify its place as a true and autonomous economic power, a position it will need in the new global digital economy. Today, this panel will provide examples of the role of technology to sustain and grow business, government, and society. We have the opportunity to learn about how ASEAN addresses the digital gap as a cohesive and synergistic group of emerging nations. And we would explore how the Master Plan of ASEAN Connectivity 2025 will help strengthen the digital connectivity in the region. Again, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the foreign policy community of Indonesia, our co-partner for today's activity, for helping formulate an interactive dialogue on the shifting currents, opportunities, and the challenges in time of pandemic, and the role of digital connectivity for post-pandemic recovery and a seamlessly integrated region. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you and your family all the best. Wish this panel a great success. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jai Chen. Before we begin the discussion, we encourage all participants to engage in the discussion by dropping your question in the YouTube live chat. And don't forget to mention your name and affiliation. Now, without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to our moderator for today, Ms. Dayu. Ms. Dayu, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is staying safe physically and mentally in this very difficult and trying times in human history. My name is Dayu. It's a pleasure for me to be your moderator for today. I would like to begin by thanking Foreign Policy Community Indonesia and Huawei for organizing and inviting me to moderate this session. As I said, and also as stated by the opening speeches, it is a special trying times in human history. But at the same time, during this global pandemic, everyone is forced to go digital, everyone is forced to go online. Those presents opportunities, but at the same time, there are also gaps that we have to collectively address as a region in ASEAN. And with that, I would like to welcome everyone. I would like to extend my warm welcome to this webinar titled Towards a More Digitized ASEAN, Shifting Currents, Opportunities, and Challenges in Times of Pandemic. So to set the stage of our discussion today, I would like to present that ASEAN as a region has a master plan on ASEAN connectivity, Vision 2025, where connectivity will play a very important role. And there are 5 focus in this plan. There's sustainable infrastructure, digital innovation, seamless logistics, regulatory excellence, and people mobility. So all these pillars will play a critical role in achieving ASEAN Vision for 2025. And therefore, to achieve this vision, there are a number of key questions that I would like also the panelists to share their thoughts. The first is, has there been a shifting digital landscape? And if yes, what are the impacts to the region? What opportunities and challenges that this present? And especially since Huawei is co-hosting our discussion today, what is the role of the private sector, including Huawei as a leading technology company providing infrastructure and smart devices, position themselves in partnering with governance, also with people, to make sure that everyone is not left behind and everyone can benefit from this technology. We have 5 distinguished speakers today. The first is His Excellency Dr. Aladdin D. Rillo, Deputy Secretary General for ASEAN. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And we also have His Excellency Dr. Rizal Afandi Lukman, Deputy Minister for International Economic Cooperation Coordination, Indonesian Coordinating Ministry of Economic Affairs. Dr. Rizal, hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you.
We also have His Excellency Odo Rene Matthew Mahutu, Deputy Coordinating Minister for Tourism and Creative Economy at the Coordinating Ministry of Maritime and Investment Affairs. Hello.
Hello, madam.
Hi, good afternoon. And we have Dr. Jayant Menon, Visiting Senior Fellow at Regional Economic Studies Program of ISEAS, Yusof Ishaq Institute Singapore, and former lead economist of ADB.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good
Nice to be here.
Hello. And we also have Sam Chung Chin Chun, Principal Digital Transformation, Public and Government Affairs at Huawei. Hello and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Great to be joined here.
Good afternoon, everyone. And let me read out the short curriculum vitae of our speakers today. Dr. Aladdin Dirillo is appointed as Deputy Secretary General for ASEAN Economic Community 2018-2021. Before that, he was a senior economist with the Asian Development Bank Institute in Tokyo, where he designed and administered capacity building and policy dialogue on development issues. Before that, he was the ASEAN Secretariat for more than 10 years, serving various positions. He holds PhD and Master of Arts degrees of Economics from University of Hawaii and an AB of Economics in Ateneo de Manila. Dr. Rizal Afandi Lukman is the Deputy Coordinating Minister for International Economic and Financial Cooperation. Previously, he was the Director for Multilateral Economic and Financial Cooperation at the same coordinating ministry, and Director for Bilateral Economic Cooperation and Asia Economic and Financial Cooperation. He received his PhD from Nagoya University International Development and his Master in International Relations from Niigata International University. Bapa Odo Manuhutu is Deputy Coordinating Minister for Tourism and Creative Economy. Previously, he served as Director for Maritime Safety and Navigation at the Coordinating Ministry of Maritime Affairs. He was the Director for Senior Diplomatic Course in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and he holds Master of Public Administration from Harvard University and Master of Arts of International Relations from Tufts University. Dr. Janet Menon is a visiting senior fellow at ASEAN's Yusuf Ishaq Institute. Previously, he was at the ADB as a chief economist from 2005-2008. He started as an academic in Australia at Monash University, and he also used to work in University of Melbourne, Victoria University, and American University in Washington, D.C. And Mr. Sam Ching Chin is a principal of digital transformation, public and government affairs. Prior to that, he was a principal of Huawei Consulting Department, leading digital transformation practice, IoT, big data, and video for the past 15 years. Without further ado, let's go to the first panelist, His Excellency Dr. Aladdin Rilo, Deputy Secretary General for ASEAN. Hello, Dr. Aladdin Rilo.
Hi, Ms. Dayu. Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, yeah, thank you.
Yes, so we have heard that ASEAN has a vision to bring member states to connectivity, better connectivity, and there's a vision of MPAC 2025. What do you think are the opportunities and challenges, especially in this time of pandemic?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think since this is my first time to speak, let me take this opportunity to thank FPCI and Huawei for inviting me in this very important event. If you look at MPAC 2025, one important priority there is on digital connectivity. And obviously, digital transformation has been an important priority in many countries in the region for many years. But it was only 3 years ago that the transformation or digital transformation has been recognized as an important priority for the region. And this is after our leaders in 2017 recognized the need for ASEAN to be prepared in embracing the fourth industrial revolution. And for me, I think looking back, I think it makes sense, and it is only very appropriate that we're looking at digital connectivity in the region as an important priority, for the simple reason that it creates a lot of positive impacts or benefits, right, to the region, in terms of, for example, increasing productivity and increasing GDP growth in the region. In fact, there is already evidence that digital integration in ASEAN will enable the region to expand or generate around $1 trillion in terms of GDP by 2025. I think that's quite huge. And also it would allow digital economy in the region to expand to around 8.5% of GDP by 2025 from 1.3% in 2015. So obviously, I think there's a lot of opportunities involved there, but ASEAN also recognizes that there are also a number of challenges that we need to be prepared with in order to fully reap the digital dividends in the region. I think it is quite obvious that digitalization will also impact on jobs, right? As, for example, artificial intelligence creates automation in a number of tasks, definitely there will be an adverse impact on the job market. It's also possible that as technologies are being diffused in a small group, that inequality might be created as well. And it might also lead to some kind of social fragmentation in the region. Finally, I think it is also possible that technologies can create some kind of physical and cyber attacks, that might also create a lot of disruptions in the region. Therefore, I think the message that I'm trying to emphasize here is that while there are benefits in terms of embracing digitalization, it is very crucial also for ASEAN to be able to manage the different technologies in order to fully reap the digital dividends. Under the MPAC 2025, as I mentioned before, digital connectivity is an important priority. And this is very much evident in a number of areas where that are being promoted to support that. For example, in terms of digitalization of MSMEs, in terms of how to promote financial inclusion, in terms of developing open data, as well as the promotion of the data governance. And at the same time, MPAC 2025 is also very much supportive of a number of initiatives in ASEAN, including, for example, the ASEAN Digital Integration Framework, which is an important framework that facilitates digital integration in the region. MPAC 2025 is also very much supportive of the work program for the e-commerce in the region, particularly for the current period of 2017 to 2025. And also it is very much supportive of the development of the consolidated strategy and the 4IR. So overall, I think MPAC 2025 is a very good initiative for the region to be able to achieve greater connectivity, because in my view, this is really the way forward to be able to achieve higher level of productivity as well as economic growth. And I'm glad that we have this forum today that emphasizes on digital connectivity, because in my view, this is really the way forward for the region. Thank you, Ms. Ayu.
Thank you. Let me follow up on that, Deputy Secretary General. It is evident from what you said that ASEAN as a region and governments need to invest in order to benefit from the digital dividend, and also to achieve the potential economic contribution that it presents. Mm-hmm. What do you think are the role of the private sector, especially private companies such as Huawei, in making sure that ASEAN as a community can achieve all these goals together?
I see. I think there's a lot of scope for intervention or role by the private sector, because I always look at digital transformation as a cross-cutting issue, meaning that it affects everything, every sectors in the economy. Therefore, it would require, in my view, a multi-stakeholder, multi-sector approach or response. And this obviously would also require participation by different stakeholders, including the private sector like Huawei. And I think there are different areas where the private sector can play a very important role. I think aside from investing in digital infrastructure, which is very critical, as well as investing in different technologies, the private sector like Huawei should be able to help address a number of priorities in the region in promoting the digital economy, particularly in areas such as digital skills, also in terms of cybersecurity, as well as digital connectivity and so forth. But in my view, there are two important possibilities here. Okay, one important possibility is in terms of data sharing. In my sense, the private sector holds a lot of information that can be used productively, to guide policy decisions, as well as to be able to deliver public services in the region. In my sense, good data is very important because it serves as an important strategic response to address a number of issues in the region. For example, what we're having right now about the pandemic, also issues about urbanization, even on environment, as well as the monitoring of our economic integration. In fact, within ASEAN, we have already developed the ASEAN framework on digital data governance. And under that framework, it identifies a number of priorities, such as, for example, data protection, cross-border data flow mechanism, as well as data connectivity. And I think these are important areas where I think the private sector can play a very important role by providing a lot of inputs, in terms of how we can better use or make use of this data, okay, in addressing a number of issues in ASEAN. Another possibility here, in my view, is in terms of how the private sector Huawei can provide digital solutions in monitoring and mapping, for example, our supply chain. As you know, this pandemic has disrupted the connectivity in the region in terms of the supply chain. Therefore, I think there is a lot of scope for the private sector like Huawei in terms of their ability to invest in different technologies like artificial intelligence or big data analytics to be able to map and also monitor supply chain resilience. For me, mapping of the supply chain is very important because it would help optimize the flows, okay, within the production functions, okay, across different industries. And at the same time, it will help also optimize the different processes, okay, within the supply chains. And once we achieve resilience in the supply chain, I think that would really help the recovery from this pandemic. Because particularly in the case of ASEAN, digital trade is an important priority in the region. And everything in the region right now depends on the supply chain connectivity. Therefore, if the private sector can help promote greater connectivity in the region, like Huawei, if they can, for example, invest in different technologies that would help ASEAN achieve greater supply chain resilience, I think that is something that would really help the region moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me now turn to Dr. Rizal Afandi Lukman. Hello, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Bapak Deputy Minister, the Deputy Secretary General has basically stated that interconnectivity of supply chains between different states in ASEAN is important. So what do you think is the role of international cooperation in this sense, making sure that Indonesia and other countries in ASEAN can recover with the help of ICT and with the help of the digital economy?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. I think within the ASEAN cooperation, there is ultimate objective to give one community that can be supported by the physical connectivity as well as the institutional connectivity and also the people-to-people connectivity. And the digital infrastructure, digital innovation is to support all of this connectivity for people-to-people as well as for the physical connectivity, free flow of goods, as well as also on the investment and also on the services. And as elaborated by the Deputy Secretary General Aladin Derilo, that I think it is very important to have this within the ASEAN, and the digital technology can help in realizing the ASEAN single window, for example. So within the 10 ASEAN members, free flow of goods can be moved seamless, and it's much faster, much easier by the implementation of the ASEAN single window. That could be possible with the support of the digital technology within the ASEAN members. As well as also during the COVID-19 pandemic, I think the role of digital technology also has been expanded not only to support the e-commerce, but also starting on e-learning, as well as also to support the e-vocation and also e-health. So meaning that within the ASEAN community, all of this e-learning, e-vocation, e-health, as well as e-commerce can be make possible to be much easier and to be much faster within the not only in one country like in Indonesia, but also could be expanded into within the ASEAN context. So that's, I think, the potential of the digital technology after the COVID-19 being accelerated to use the society. So I think that's the benefit of having digital technology in our life, especially in the ASEAN community. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Bapa. You mentioned ASEAN single window, and I believe that Deputy Secretary General, and you also mentioned that regulatory excellence or reforms are necessary ingredient for success in catalyzing private sector investment. Can you perhaps share what Indonesia has, Indonesia's vision with regards to this?
Yes, firstly, to accelerate the digital economy transformation in Indonesia, the government has put 5 priority. First, increasing access and intensifying digital infrastructure development. The government is currently in the process of finishing the high-speed internet program in more than 12,000 sub-districts and 150,000 public services points throughout the country. Second, preparing a digital transformation roadmap in the strategic sectors, including within the government, providing the public services online, the one that we already introduced, OSS, online single submission for the investors. But that could be expanded for another public service. Education, health, trade, industry, as well as on broadcasting, which is now being also accelerated by revision of the regulation within the Omnibus Law. The third, expediting data center integration, because we need to have one data Indonesia, satu data Indonesia. So many data center spread out within the several line ministry, central and local government. So we need to have this unified data Indonesia. As now is already started with the digital map, Indonesia digital map, that becoming the reference, the usage for Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Land, and others. The fourth is to have the comprehensive and sustainable development level at the group talent, including at the digital literation, digital talent leaders of digital era. And lastly, preparing on the regulation, as I mentioned, particularly on the financing and funding schemes. The government is working on finishing primary legislation to support digital ecosystem, such as law of private data protection and Omnibus Law on telecommunication and broadcasting that aims to accelerate national television broadcasting on the digital-based technology. So those are the 5 strategies now is being taken by the government.
Those are very significant strides and achievements, I believe, for Indonesia. That and it's very heartwarming to see that the government is taking serious, taking data integration, data governance, and infrastructure seriously. And with that, let me go to the creative economy and the tourism sector. Bapak Odo Manhutu from the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime and Investment Affairs. Hello, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ibu Dayu.
Yes, so basically the Deputy Secretary General and Dr. Rizal has also mentioned that digital economy plays a very important role in the path to economic recovery. And since COVID-19 also is seriously impacting the tourism sector, and we also have witnessed how ASEAN countries, ASEAN member states have suffered significantly and seriously because of the mobility restrictions. So how do you think digitalization or increased digitalization can help the tourism industry back on track at this time?
All right, thank you, Ibu Dayu, and it's good to see Pak Rizal, Pak Cheng, Pak Rilo, and Pak Jaya. I think the issue is during this COVID-19, since starting in this January or February this year, apparently size matters. The size of Indonesia market matters a lot. Yes, our economy is being bettered, especially tourism sector. But if you look at the data, our dependence to foreign tourists is less than 20%. It depends which data you are looking at. So apparently, as in China as well, domestic consumption preserve the economic engine of Indonesia. And this is how we see what we look at in various places in Indonesia. Yes, there's one or some places are being affected by the COVID-19, like Bali, because Bali depended a lot on foreign tourism. But if you look at across Indonesia, either in Sumatra or Java, even if you look to Yogyakarta, Semarang, this area, Medan, the tourism industry is still on track to recover. And one of the reasons is because of the infrastructure project that was initiated by the president for the past 5 years. There will be toll road that will be built more than 4,000 kilometers until 2025. What does it mean? It means that yes, people might be afraid at this stage to travel by air, but now they are taking more and more of their time by using their own vehicle. And this is how we see it in Java. People are traveling more by car from Jakarta to Semarang to Jogja, or from Medan to Lake Toba, and so forth. So this is the trend. Yes, we are affected, but apparently not all. So we are blessed, and we are blessed that we have big market, and that domestic market helps us to sustain the economic growth. And hopefully we can have positive economic growth by next year. And probably Rizal will have more data on that. So the outlook is positive. Second is that the question about digitalization. I would not say digitalization because it sounds like the matrix, but more I would say it's the use of technology, information technology, to speed up the efficiency and effectiveness in doing business. And we see that during the pandemic, there's a decrease of sales of those who are still dependent on offline method. In Indonesia, there are more than 64 SMEs, small medium enterprises. And there's only in the beginning of the pandemic, there are around 8 million who are SMEs that are using the digital platform. And on the 14 May this year, the president announced that we launch the Bangga Buatan Indonesia, or it's proudly made in Indonesia products. The idea is to increase onboarding of 2 million additional SMEs to the digital platform until the end of this year, December. In the beginning, we were skeptical if we can reach that 2 million, but as the president already announced it, 2 million additional SMEs to join the digital platform, we overshoot the target. So by last November, we already reached 3.2 million additional SMEs onboarding. So we are now in Indonesia, there are more than 11 million SMEs that are using the digital platform. And next year, we are pushing for 30 million. So yes, the COVID-19 has serious effects, a consequence on our economy, to a lot of people, health, but also it gives us an opportunity to speed up the process of onboarding those SMEs. And we see that those who are embracing the digital platform, their sales are going up by sometimes more than 100%, 200%, 300%. So the promise of digital is there, but the question is whether we will go fully digital. Probably not, because as social beings, we like to meet each other. So this is one way to say it. Yes, we like to buy things through our digital platform, Tokopedia and so forth, but once in a while you want to see directly another being to another human being. So digital platform is just a means for us to protect our economy, to increase the size of the, to increase the economic growth, and most importantly is how we can promote welfare to all Indonesians. I think digital will stay here, but human interaction one to one cannot be replaced unless someday we can use the Star Trek technology, where you can be transported from one place to another place in a blink of an eye.
So the new normal can never be the normal, especially for Indonesians, I believe. You have mentioned, and also previous speakers have mentioned, the importance of having resilient SMEs, or small and medium enterprises, including micro enterprises. I think ensuring that they're resilient and digital or technology savvy is an enormous task for a public institution or a public sector to do it alone. How do you think that governments can also partner with the private sector, including with Huawei, in making sure that SMEs are resilient, but also the human resources can also be up to speed when we're talking about the future of digital economy?
I think that two elements of your question. First is about partnerships. Second, about human resources. On the partnership, when we announced the BBI Bangga Buatan Indonesia on the 14th of May, this is not only government-driven activities. This is in cooperation with all the e-commerce platform, the fintech, all the private sector. And we can reach that numbers. It's because not of what the government is doing by itself, but we, as Indonesians, we work together as one entity, and this is the beauty of the COVID-19. It makes people to work together. Yes, we compete. I mean, the private sector, they compete among themselves, but it also shows us the way that we have to work there, so that that all the economic activity can survive. Yeah, so it's not it's not a question about whether we can work with the private sector. It is, we work. Now it's a question how we can deliver it in due time. Now the question of human resource, I think with the pandemic that speed up the process, I think we have to redefine what sort of human capacity of the human resources. We have to redefine it, and then we have to retain it, retrain them, and reallocate. Maybe in the long run there will be some position that will vanish, and the question is now how the government, and in cooperation with the private sector, with Huawei, how we can help the process of Indonesians, especially the millennials, to migrate from the offline to the online, and to have the right skill and knowledge.
Thank you. So with that, let me transition to Dr. Jayant Menon. Hello, Dr. Menon.
Hi, Ms. Jayo.
Hi. So the previous speaker has stopped at human resources, and it's interesting because when we talk about digital transformation or digital revolution, we need to also have a vision on the future of jobs. How do you think the future of jobs and employment be for ASEAN?
Right. Okay. I think this is a critical question. Thank you for raising it. And in fact, all my co-panelists, I think, have kind of referred to it already in one way or the other. So what will happen with jobs? I think the first point to keep in mind is that this whole fourth industrial revolution, if you like, of which digitization is a key part, will cause a lot of disruption. These are all about highly disruptive technologies. And a lot of that disruption will manifest in labor markets. This is what people have referred to as churning of jobs. So a lot of jobs will be displaced or replaced by automation, but there'll also be a lot of new jobs that are created, but perhaps further down the track. And because it's difficult to actually predict all of those new jobs and where they will be and how many of them there will be, we can usually end up being quite pessimistic that this will be a net job destroying outcome. I don't think that's true. I think we just have to look at history to guide us. And every industrial revolution, we've had, this is the fourth, every industrial revolution has been accompanied by the same concerns. You know, the doomsday sayers have, you know, been talking about job losses and how, you know, we will suffer great unemployment. And every time, what we have found is that the number of jobs have actually increased at the end, and living standards have improved, poverty has fallen, and so that's the experience. Okay, sure, some would say, well, this time it's different. This time it's even difficult to predict how this revolution will evolve. The changes themselves are unpredictable. They are endogenous, as the economists like to say. Well, that might be true, but I still think that we might be confusing gross and net effects. The gross effects are very obvious, the job displacements. But then as jobs get displaced, new jobs are created because of that displacement. And usually these are better paying jobs, like low-skilled jobs, when they're automated, will require more supervisory jobs. And so, there will be a lot of new jobs. They're harder to predict, so we don't often think of them when we look at this issue. And they're also usually further down the track. But on the whole, I think history tells us that there is enough room to be optimistic, that there will be net job creations in the long run. But in the short run, there'll be a lot of disruption. There could even be rises in unemployment in the short run. But we should not deter us from pressing harder, but we should be better prepared. So more investments in skills development to enable greater mobility within the job market. That is what we should take away, not the pessimism that this will end up with more unemployed people.
Okay, before I go to the next question, let me say hello and greet Bapak Rus Nur Hadi Sutejo from Coordinating Ministry of Political and Security Affairs. Then going back to you, Dr. Menon, you mentioned that there may be disruption and maybe not everyone will be able to transition seamlessly into the new requirement of digitalization that entails. Do you think that there will be, or there is already a divide across ASEAN member states, maybe rural and urban, or do you think that there's also a generation divide? COVID-19 pandemic has presented this issue because suddenly we have to order food for our parents and grandparents, for example, even though we're remotely away, and teach them how to use technology. So one, is there already a divide? Will this divide or inequality worsen? And how do you think ASEAN should address this as a region? Those are plenty already.
Yes, there's lots of difficult questions all in one. I think starting with what you said about COVID, I think COVID, as we often say, shines a spotlight on these sorts of disparities and divisions. They were there before COVID. Perhaps we have seen them more clearly because of COVID, and they might increase a bit because of COVID, but they're present. And I think, people often say the silver lining from this horrible pandemic is that we might, fasten our movement towards a digital economy. That's one of the good things, that in the environment. And I think that's true, but it won't be an even or equal transition. The fact that some countries will benefit more than others already shows us that there'll be inter-country inequalities that will increase. as a result of digitization. But as you said, even within countries and between generations or within families, you can see growing disparities and the impacts of this digitization playing out. Within countries, I think there's this rural-urban divide you mentioned, but that correlates strongly with skills again. Right? There's a skills premium here that will involve a sharp increase in inequality within countries. And of course, if low-skilled workers are more likely to be displaced, then that worsens the gaps in incomes as we go forward. Well, these are all, realities we must face. We are not completely, in the dark about them. We've been dealing with rising inequality for a long time. Digitization simply increases the pace of the increase in the divide. But we can deal with them through public and private sector interventions, and also through hard and soft infrastructure development. I think there's a need, as I said earlier, to increase investments in skills development, to increase mobility. At the end of the day, dealing with inequality will be best addressed by allowing people to get better jobs. That would be the real long-term solution, equipping them to take advantage of new opportunities created by digitization. That's the sustainable way to deal with inequalities, I think. And also the development of infrastructure that's more accessible to all groups in society. We have, again, a lot of hard infrastructure that's not available to the rural sectors. The internet connectivity rates are quite low, and also amongst the poorer families, poorer households that may not have access even to a computer, let alone the internet. So both soft and hard infrastructure, soft in the forms of increasing digital literacy and skills, hard in the forms of better access to the internet, and also equipment, computers and everything else. That is how we can address the rising pressures on inequality. But I think at the end of the day, inequality will rise. We just have to try to manage the increase.
Thank you. So with that, let me move to Mr. Sam Chung Ching from Huawei, Principal Digital Transformation, Public and Government Affairs. Hello, sir. Good afternoon.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Yes. So after listening to the previous panelists so far, what do you think of digital economy in ASEAN so far?
Yeah, it's a good, actually, for our point of view. Globally, we think that have a different definition of digital economy. From statics, let's say, globally in the developing countries is around 10% of the GDP. But in the developed countries, it's about 20% of the GDP. And we have a look into Asian report. It's about digital integration 2018 shows that Asia's digital economy is around 7% of the GDP, relatively a little bit low. But actually, it's a very positive side in Asian. Let's say, in terms of time spending on the mobile, Asian is the most engaged mobile internet region in the world. Let's say Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand are all about 4 hours per day. And actually, this is majorly driven and enabled by a rapid expansion of the 4G network in these countries. And currently, let's say, we have seen another report, they call Economy SEA 2020. Let's say on the average across SEA, it's around 6 countries. It's 1/3 of all the digital services consumers are new to the service due to the COVID-19. Let's say it's quite responsive actions to the COVID. And somehow we'll also have a doubt that if it's a post-pandemic that the digitalization will be sustained or not. That's another data shows that even higher than 90% of the new digital service consumers are intended to be continue to the services. Let's say this is a kind of really accelerated digital transition in the Asian, and still have a large portion of the population to be enjoy the mobile internet. But and also, as mentioned by the other distinguished guest, there's still a large portion of the population as remain offline and cannot fully participate in the digital economy. And even more, I think that for the business, the high-speed broadband is even more scarce resources, especially a fiber broadband. Overall, let's say I'm quite think that's promising for digital Asian in the future. For the next 10 years, it will be continuously a proper prosperity of the digital consumer markets. That's kind of we will see a lot of new unicom or digital champions in the region, and will drive digital services for the consumers. And ultimately, that will drive the industrial digital transition. I think that will be parallelly happening in the Asian countries. Yeah, that's my response.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, you're saying that ASEAN as a region and the countries are on the right trajectory. It's on a positive outlook. So how do you see Huawei as a leading technological company in supporting the digital transformation that countries are undertaking in ASEAN?
As an ICT company, we are trying to actually to enable the country to do their overall the digital transition. We are trying to contribute our full resources and our capability to support. And during this pandemic, actually, Huawei was, let's say, we are the first major task for us is support our telco carriers, the clients, to sustain and maintain the network stable and operated, and even do some temporary operations on site. And it was make sure this is critical infrastructure for the whole society. And secondly, we are bringing the new technologies to the governments and hospitals. For example, we are bringing like the multiple video conference systems with our new products we call is kind of audio hub. It's kind of can more advanced ICT tools to the governments and to the hospitals to do some kind of remote consultation and management meetings. And we also introduced several like the AI to the hospitals to support AI diagnosis for the COVID-19. It's really happening in the Philippines, Thailand, and Indonesia. And finally, as mentioned by the distinguished guest, the ICT capabilities or digital skills, we have the partnership with actually the international organizations, UNESCO, and governments together. We are providing some e-learning resources and maintain the network and platform to sustain the online educations. And also we have ambitious that objective. We will have ICT academic for Asian. We will try to actually to educate or support 200,000 professionals, ICT professionals in the next 5 years. That's what we would like to contribute and support in the region.
Thank you. Also, previous speakers have mentioned and stressed the importance of regulatory framework that are conducive for the transformation. Investment, the importance of investment in both soft and hard infrastructure. So from Huawei, what do you think is still missing from the countries in ASEAN?
Let's say it's quite difficult questions. I see that a lot of things are addressed, but globally, let's say, I think that's majorly the difficulties for the transition is to trigger a kind of meaningful and massive distribution, digitalization for all the industries. but which are really difficult challenges are the first one is still within the digital infrastructure. It is the foundation. It's actually the high value creation for all levels of the value chain, whatever is the industry or economies as a whole. And we can see that most or many the economic sectors or undergo the digital transition. If they are without a high speed and persuasive connectivity infrastructure, there will no digitalization. So for all the countries, whatever the size and developing. But after all, well, we will try to build a kind of consensus on the blueprint for the next generation digital infrastructure. I think that is kind of a good consideration. The first one, we have talked a lot about the digital connectivity. That's including kind of super fast connectivity, mobile broadband, fiber, backbones, international exchanges for the region to the other region. It is connectivity level. And the second, let's say, for the economy going to be digital and intelligent, that was relies on a lot of resources to compute and to support the data, and like the data centers, high performance computing centers. These are need to be ready for the AI and kind of intelligence. And the third, as you mentioned about kind of the traditional infrastructure also needed. My suggestion is when building the new traditional infrastructure like railway stations like that, you will try to integrate some digital elements inside that will make a little bit better experience for the customer, or even more efficient for managing the assets. So it's the first I can say about the digital infrastructure. And the second, the challenge is, let's say, how we try to encourage to be meaningful, or to be a good scale. So I think the major target still, I was mentioned a lot in here, it's about the MS and MES. These are a lot of portion of the population, a lot of the employment and also the economic contribution. I think the key is providing the affordability, the first for the solutions, and the reach of the network for the availability of the network. This is a key to special for the rural and some areas. And I think that for the affordability and this, to connect these SMEs to a platform, let's say, and which is rely on the cloud could be a good option for them. It's quite low cost and convenient to be ready to offer services on the platform. It's good for them to go. I think Indonesia is doing great in that initiative. And secondly, we are thinking that if that was pave a way for the digital startups, that could be starting from startups to be a unicorn, and eventually it goes to be actually digital champion, regional, or even globally. That was that was key for this, was embracing kind of the new emerging technology ecosystem, which has a potential large scale markets. If we combine these two, we'll think that will be a lot of opportunities in the mobile internet that can be addressed, starting from the Asian point of view. And the last, as we mentioned about, that's true for the industries or private sectors and even the government, is to be a more open data and sharing mechanism and under kind of data governance to protect the consumers' privacy and so on. It's quite important to look into for sharing and dig more value from that point of view. So yes, that's my answer. Hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you for the panelists. I believe that Odo Manuhutu from Coordinating Ministry of Maritime and Investment Affairs have left. So if any of the audience are working with him, let me convey our gratitude.
I'm still here.
Oh, you're still here. I thought you have left. Well, that was connection problem then.
It's technology. I'm in the car
All
now.
right. Okay.
So.
Okay. So since you're in the car, we have some questions from our audience. Let me read out a question that is directed to you then. Is there any efforts among ASEAN member states, including Indonesia, to think that digital payment platforms such as Alipay or WeChat Pay, that this can be promoted across Asian countries. And these are technology that can work off a mobile phone that provides real-time settlement and automated currency exchange. So the question to you is do you think that there is a move across ASEAN countries to work on a common platform to allow e-payment systems to be working across all countries? And what do you think is the role of Indonesia and Indonesian companies? We have a number of fintech companies in this case.
Sorry, what I can say is that first is that ASEAN as a whole is around 500 million people. So the market is large enough. So what is Indonesia is doing is we are first is the central bank try to promote the use of QRAs, Quick Response Indonesia standard, which means that irrespective what sort of platform you are using, Quick Standard Indonesia, Quick Response Indonesia standard in any merchant you can use it. So I think it's the key is not about standardizing, but to leverage whatever technology that is available that can go not only in the big cities, but also down to the rural area. It's not a question of standardization. I think each market has its own characteristic, and for that, a lot of the players in Indonesia, let's say OVO, GoPay, Link Aja, they try to cater a very specific market, and also Dana. The market is large, so it doesn't have to be one market, one single player can reach other market. But one single player, let's say Dana, can attract customers from a certain area, a certain segment. Now the problem is in this area, as our colleague from Huawei said, is that about the infrastructure. Now the Ministry of Information, in cooperation with a lot of the stakeholders, are trying to push for deep penetration to the rural area. I think the issue of the use of technology, that it will help Indonesia to address the issue or to slow the progress of urbanization. And by using technology, I think even if you are living in rural area and remote places in Indonesia, you can still access good healthcare, good education, and other ancillary services. I think that's the value of the digital technology. It levels, it brings services even up to remote area, and this, in the long run, it will help us to lessen the burden of cities. I think that will be my answer.
Thank you, and thank you for the. I think we saw a bit of a Minnie Mouse picture there. That's very cute. No. We love Minnie Mouse. So
that's my niece.
Oh yeah. That's really cute. Anyways, let me go to Deputy Secretary General Dr. Aladin Rillo. That was a question from Rene Patirajawane, by the way, Center for Chinese Studies, Indonesia. To Deputy Secretary General Dr. Aladin Rillo, we have a number of questions. Let me combine the questions all together. We have Calvin from Pelita Harapan University, and we have Moses from BINUS. So the question is, what are the challenges to harmonize governance in the ASEAN member states? Do you think that harmonizing regulation across the states is possible? And what do you think that cooperation and that harmonization will bring?
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me.
Okay.
Yeah, thank
Yes.
you, Ibu Dayu. Okay. I think the issue of regulatory cooperation, particularly in the context of digital connectivity, is crucial. Earlier, I think Dr. Dino earlier mentioned also, right, during his speech that if we want to achieve greater digital connectivity, then we have to focus first and foremost on the issue of regulatory connectivity as well. And in ASEAN, that is one of the priorities actually in the region. And I think one very good example here is the e-commerce agreement that was signed in 2018. That, in my view, is one of the concrete initiatives in the region and how we can harmonize regulatory issues in the region as far as digital connectivity is concerned. Because having a more harmonized and a stronger regulatory system would definitely help strengthen the digital ecosystem in the region. The e-commerce agreement again is, I think it will be hopefully be fully ratified this year, and that would really help give confidence on the region as far as our efforts on connectivity is concerned. Similarly, there are other initiatives in the region that are focusing on harmonizing regulatory issues and policies. One of them is the ASEAN Digital Integration Framework that was signed in 2018, and also an action plan has already been developed. And one of the things that this framework is trying to address is how to create greater harmony in terms of regulations and policies on digital connectivity. It is something that we're trying to work hard, really, the region as a whole. But again, this is something that is not very easy to achieve, right? Considering that every country, they have their own regulatory systems to implement. But I think what's the beauty of regional cooperation, especially in ASEAN, is that we're able to get all these countries agree in different ways to make sure that everybody is able to work together towards this digital connectivity in the region. Yeah.
Thank you. Let me go to Dr. Rizal. We have a question from Sri Lanka Embassy in Jakarta. What do you think government needs to do to increase digital literacy among the public? And then the next is a question from Pradipta, FPCI chapter UPNVJ. You mentioned there are 5 priorities of digitalization for Indonesia. Now speaking about digital literacy and resilience, do you think that there needs to be special emphasis or priority for rural and remote areas and villages in Indonesia?
Yes, thank you very much, Ibu Dayu, for also those 2 very good questions. I think the role of the digital technology is not only accelerating the growth of the economy, but also there is impact in reducing the inequality. Why? It can happen reducing inequality in several ways. First is digital technology or digital means can provide the access to the economic activities that previously not available for people at the bottom of the pyramid. So I think this is happen, for example, in the marketplace of the digital market. For example, Alibaba has unlocked the market for rural e-retailers through 2,118 Taobao villages as of 2019. Bukalapak, for example, in Indonesia, is also unlock the market for more than 4 million merchants. This is the impact that the SMEs, the rural area also can be benefited from having this digital platform. This is another example. Rakuten, for example, in Japan, also unlock more than 20 million customers to 40,600 merchants. This is another example. Secondly, the digital means also, or technology also can retain, enhance, and create employment as well. This is, for example, this is very easy in Indonesia with the phenomenon of Gojek. The Gojek connected more than 1 million drivers and 40 million customers being benefited from having this Gojek, particularly during this COVID-19 pandemic. When we are afraid to go to mall, to the shops, we just grab the cellular phones and then starting to order our food and so on and so on. And that also unlocked more than 1.5 million jobs because like the restaurants, the vendors also can be also benefited because less people is coming to the shops, but still there is a buyer through these Gojeks. Another things also example in Upwork in US, Upwork unlocked job opportunities to more than 12 million freelancers. This is another example. The third role of the digital technology is also can provide the unbanked population access to the financial services. This is, I think, the situation where, for example, in Brazil, new banks unlock access to bank account and credit cards for more than 1.5 million unbanked users. So this is the example that by the support of the digital technology can have the role in reducing the inequality in many ways, as I said, through the sharing economy, through the workforce digitalization, as well as on the financial inclusion. So I think those are hopefully can address that, meaning that that's also part if it is used, this digital technology by ordinary people, by the SMEs, by the motor drivers, that also part of digital literacy. So I think resiliency of using the digital technology among society also can be improved. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rizal. Let me go to Mr. Sam Cheng Ching Chen. Basically, Dr. Rizal mentions the opportunities that digital economy can bring. It can generate jobs, people can participate in peer-based digital economy. It can also accelerate access to finance. What do you think is the role of the private sector in this case? This is also a question from Sri Lanka Embassy in Jakarta.
Yes, actually, it's a good news.
Yes,
and it's a proven case that digital technology and solutions can really help the society and also the business. So from a Huawei point of view, that's we are seeing that a large demands for the facility of digital infrastructure are undergoing. And one point I want to bring here is, let's say, leading economy in the world are trying to put their digital in one of the key pillar in their economic stimulus plan. For example, in Korea, in the May, they have a digital New Deal announced. There were a huge amount of stimulus plan, and it was covering a lot on the 5G and the data processing infrastructure and AI in that country. And for the EU, it's another example. They call this next EU to go digital and green as a huge kind of funds is called like that. For example, Horizon for the emerging technologies. They have Connect Europe fundings for the connectivities, 5G corridors. These kind of programs are all driving for digital infrastructures. And also we can see China, we have a new infrastructure. So these plans are huge kind of invest, both from the government initial funding and also partnership with private sectors. A lot of investment was coming into this area. And so let's say for me, we are good to look to see that it's a proven case for digital solutions, and we see that the effect is positive and to support all the kind of society and the governments here. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go to Dr. Jayant Menon. There's a question from Mahatma Devi in Unut. You mentioned about inequality and also displacement of some people who cannot keep up with the digital transformation. What do you think are the steps that need to be taken by governments in ASEAN to address this?
Right. Okay. So I think in terms of displacement from the workforce point of view, one of the things that governments in ASEAN, individual ASEAN countries need to do is look again at our whole education system. I'm from an era where you learned a set of skills, and of course you keep trying to update your skills, but those core skills would serve you quite well throughout your career. These days, the new generation can no longer hope to just survive in that way. What they have to do is learn how to keep learning. And this involves a very different type of pedagogy, different type of whole institutional educational framework. And I think the education systems need to be responsive to this sort of dynamism that we have to provide our young generation with. At a regional level, again, this comes back to both the displacement and the inequality. At the regional level, I think ASEAN could work harder to deal with this perennial issue of labor mobility. This is a classic problem highlighted again by the COVID-19 pandemic. We have a large number of unrecorded, undocumented workers in this region. This is the largest number of labor mobility in this region. And we need to try and formalize those informal workers. And they can actually provide great benefits in responding to this displacement. We have both young and aging societies. Workers, low-skilled workers that are displaced in younger societies can be usefully or gainfully employed in the richer societies that are aging. So if we can formalize a lot of this informal flows, increase labor mobility, there are win-win outcomes here for both, taking into account the skill levels in different countries and the demographic profile differences across countries of ASEAN as well. I think that's where sort of regional cooperation can play a role in dealing with the short-term impacts of displacement. But it's not just the low-skilled workers. We know that already the highest skilled workers are threatened by artificial intelligence, right? It's not just the labor-intensive workers. But then a lot of these poorer countries need to import a lot of the skills in the short run. They can't develop those skills indigenously very quickly. So labor mobility in the higher skill levels has to play a bigger role. ASEAN has the mutual recognition arrangements in place, but they're already out of date because of the fourth industrial revolution. The kinds of new skills that need to be covered by the MRIs have to be responsive to this dynamic changes taking place. The MRAs are a good idea, but they need to be upgraded to take into account the requirements of the new technological age. Let me stop there.
Thank you. Let me go to the Deputy Secretary General, Dr. Aladdin Rillo. Perhaps one, you may want to respond to what Dr. Jayant Menon said about the need for ASEAN to be up to speed with regards to mutual recognition of professional accreditation, including the new sets of skills that the digital or the future may require. And we also have a question from Eggy Dilienda. You mentioned, Deputy Secretary General, that data security or protection of data is also a critical pillar in ASEAN's vision for increased connectivity. So what do you think ASEAN as a region need to invest in this sense?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dayu. Perhaps I can first comment on what Dr. J has mentioned about the importance of labor mobility in the region. I fully agree with him that this is one area that ASEAN has been trying to work hard over the years to make sure that that part of our market integration in the region is to make sure that there's also free movement of people, okay, within ASEAN. And I think there are two issues here. One is about the non-skilled workers, right? And there are already in the region a number of initiatives that protect our migrant workers in the region. I think more so during this pandemic, where there are a number of initiatives being implemented to do that. In terms of professional skilled labor people, I think we also have the existing MRAs. But I think there's also a need now, as mentioned by Jade, not only to upgrade all these existing MRAs, but also to think of a new one, you know, on how we can really promote greater labor mobility, particularly in the context of this digital connectivity. In fact, digital literacy, if I may also elaborate further on, is that this is one area that ASEAN has been trying to promote, particularly for the youth, right? I mean, we know that the ability to fully embrace the 4IR would also depend on the existence of the skills out there, you know, for people to be able to embrace the 4IR. Therefore, in relation to digital literacy, this is something also that the region has been trying to promote over the years. For example, our ministers on youth have agreed, I think in 2 years ago, to prioritize digital skills development as part of youth development in ASEAN. And also during the summit last month, they also issued a joint declaration on how we can further enhance youth development in the region. And one of the priorities that they have recommended or emphasized is the need to promote digital literacy, particularly for this age group. In relation to data security, again, this is an important area in our digital integration agenda in ASEAN. We have already in place the ASEAN framework on digital data governance. And as I mentioned before, an important component of this framework is how we can promote greater data security in the region. At the same time, how we can further promote the data classification and as well as the movement of data in the region. Cybersecurity, as you know, is an important issue in ASEAN. I don't think we will be able to achieve a successful digital connectivity if this issue of cybersecurity is not addressed. And I think that is also related to the issue of data security. I just would like to emphasize that there are already existing initiatives in ASEAN that try to promote greater data protection in the region, not only among the people, but also among the businesses, because we recognize that we will not be able to achieve this digital connectivity if the very important issue of data security is not being addressed. But we also recognize that while there are existing initiatives in the region, these are just a start. We also need to make sure that there are other initiatives that we can further develop in the coming years. And at the same time, we recognize that governments alone will not be able to implement this. You know, we need the support of everybody, of all the sectors in the region, including, of course, the private sector. Because as I mentioned earlier, the private sector has the advantage of access to this data, right? Big data analytics, for example. Therefore, if we can get the private sector like Huawei to help us, you know, in developing a very good digital ecosystem that promotes data security, I think that is something that would really help the region achieve greater digital connectivity in the coming months and years. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me turn to Dr. Rizal and Pa Odo if he is still with us. So we have basically discussed the importance of labor mobility and also a mutual recognition of professional skills within ASEAN. So do you think that Indonesia is ready? Let me go to Dr. Rizal first. Is Indonesia ready for an open labor market in the digital economy?
Very good question. Because I think Indonesia now is starting enjoying on the demographic bonus, whereby the young generation and the productive working age now is dominating a big portion of the population in Indonesia. And according to some surveys, this is also based on the scientific approach. The millennials, the young generation is more digital literacy than the older generation. Urban people also much better in terms of digital literacy than people living in the rural area. I think that's the fact, not only in Indonesia. I think it's the common phenomenon in many emerging countries. And now the question is how I think this mutual recognition agreement can be benefited by Indonesian people. Yes, because as I said, Indonesia now is starting enjoying the demographic bonus, where many young people, young generation also can have a better understanding in digital literacy. Then, therefore, I think in terms of the opportunity within the movement of natural person, movement of people within the ASEAN, I think the young generations in Indonesia can have better off right now. So I think that's becoming the potential for the Indonesian young people to work in not only located in a company in Indonesia, but also elsewhere in the ASEAN. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me turn to Pa Odo if you're still with us. We have Indonesian unicorns expanding to Southeast Asia. Do you think that Indonesia can be the center of digital innovation in ASEAN under your supervision, of course?
Well, I think the issue is not whether we can be the center or not. It's a question how we embrace the technology. And this is a small example I can give you. About a month ago, one Indonesian entity called Bakti, they tried to educate some villagers in Lake Toba about the use of technology, how to use technology. And we are talking about old women in their 50s, 60s to use technology to sell their product. They were trained for about 2 weeks to sell their products. And what happened is that their products, the sales of their product went up by more than 100 to 100%. What does it mean? It means that even if you're old, 60, 70, if you're adaptive enough, you can make use of the technology. And I think the young generation of Indonesian, more than 50 million, they will be the backbone of our growth in the next 20 years. The question is more how we can create the right space for them to grow, and the right space to do that. This is what the Ministry of Education trying to do, to reform our education system. And second is to invest more in R&D. I understand like Huawei spend more than $8 billion on R&D, and this is just one company. Imagine if Indonesian companies also invest in that in R&D. I think we need to give more incentive for Indonesian private companies to invest more in R&D so that we can reap the benefit of digitalization. Not digitalization, but the digital world, because every time I use the word digitalization, it gives me the idea of the matrix.
We're all Keanu Reeves fans. So, or is it people that are our age who still are familiar with Keanu Reeves? Let me go to Mr. Sam Chingchen. Pa Odo mentioned that Huawei is spending significantly on research and development. Do you think that a company like Huawei can also partner with governments in Southeast Asia to make sure that countries and people in Southeast Asia can benefit from innovation?
Sure. Actually, Huawei is actually extensive business approach in the South Asia and Asian countries. We are glad to support every country to go digital and to benefit from our R&D, let's say spillovers, or they have some partnership even in academic to seeking for some new development of technologies. As we are quite open for that approach. Actually, in Huawei, we have a new process we call it Innovation 2.0, which is not a kind of majorly focused on the invention. It's from the theory, let's say basic theory breakthrough to kind of new IPRs. We are open to the academics and also the kind of you have these kind of collaborations together with the government and also the local industry. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Jayant Menon, the question to you is, we know that Southeast Asian countries, particularly the Philippines and Indonesia, have the demographic bonus that we can tap into in the near future. But does it have a digital dividend or a digital bonus that it can also tap into in the near or immediate future?
Right. Thank you for that question. I think, as was mentioned already, the younger generation are much better equipped to deal with the intricacies of this whole digital age. In fact, they learn it right from first day at school, using it all the way. And in fact, they are ready to teach us older people a few tricks as well. So they have that obvious advantage. If you like, it's a new kind of latecomer advantage, I guess. But I think in terms of the dividend, as I was mentioning earlier, the important thing here is to try and exchange that dividend in a mutually beneficial way. So the poorer countries that have large populations and large populations of young people, can find that they their chances of employment are much greater if they have a bigger regional job market that they can access. And this is beneficial for both sending and receiving countries. It's not a one-way street. But the issue again is the policy on labor mobility. I want to say, though, that this is not an easy issue anywhere in the world. It's probably the most sensitive issue. We can see already the region that's done this the best, Europeans, are now facing the inevitable backlash on the effects of globalization. Brexit is one example of it, but there's other ways in which it manifests. The whole anti-globalization push around the world, in some sense, comes back to going too far too quickly. So it needs to be a graduated approach. ASEAN, I think, has done well, is struggling to do more, as everyone is, but the gains or the prize is so great that we should all work harder because both sides can win. And we should look beyond ASEAN also. RCEP has been signed now. We hope that it'll come into effect in about a year's time, hopefully. And there we have, China, Japan, and Korea, three huge economies, all of them aging, some at quite a high rate. And so if we can try and bring this mobility within this bigger group, then I think countries like the Philippines and Indonesia, would gain tremendously. India, unfortunately, is not in it, but they also have a young population that could have gained from this. But certainly, looking beyond just ASEAN, ASEAN is still the center, but RCEP, I think, would provide great opportunities in terms of sharing this demographic dividend, and aging and young societies can come together and benefit from the advances provided by digitization.
Thank you so much. So I think that concludes the Q&A from the public. Thank you so much for everyone that is connected to us through YouTube and through Zoom for posting their questions. Let me now, before I close, invite all panelists to provide a 1-minute concluding remarks, basically on how do you think that ASEAN can navigate this crisis so that it can achieve its connectivity vision and also achieve and reap the potential that the digital economy can offer and can bring. Let me begin with Deputy Secretary General, Dr. Aladin Rillo.
Yeah, thank you so much again, Ms. Dayu. I think we are all aware that, again, digital transformation is here to stay, right? And I think that's the way forward for ASEAN in the coming years, particularly during this pandemic. In our ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework, for example, one important broad strategy that we have proposed here is inclusive digital transformation, because we recognize that that is the force that would really allow the region to recover from this pandemic. And the current situation has very much demonstrated how the use of different digital technologies, right, during this time, from online shopping to online or remote working, and even the acceleration of vaccine discovery has made use of all these different technologies, And the use of different technologies has actually allowed countries to reach out to other markets, right, and unleash productivity improvements in the way people interact with each other and the way businesses operate. And I think moving forward, that would continue, and ASEAN is very much ready to move towards that direction. As I mentioned before, we are now in the process of developing the regional strategy on the FIR, which will definitely provide the overall direction and how the region will proceed towards embracing the FIR. But again, as I also mentioned, this is not only something that governments in ASEAN will be able to achieve by themselves. We need the cooperation of everyone, the private sector like Huawei, the academe, and everyone to be able to make sure that this digital transformation is here to stay, and that this is something that would really benefit the region. I think it's the main issue here is how we're able to manage the different technologies, right? By strong cooperation among ASEAN countries in order to reap the benefits of these digital dividends. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. Rizal Afandi Lukman.
Thank you. I have two words. The first one, let us level up our capability in digital literacy, from ability to find and select information to become also can produce and share creative content in digital media. Second, we should be ready towards a more digitized ASEAN, particularly utilizing the great opportunity as well as also mitigating the challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Bapak Odo Manuhutu?
3 words: unlearn, relearn, and rejoice with the new technology. That's all.
Thank you. Short, concise, short and sweet. Dr. Jayant Menon?
I think every important point has already been made, but let me just re-emphasize, I think that there's great opportunities that the 4IR and digitization presents, and ASEAN can play a very important role, I think, in helping create the ecosystem across this region in reaping the benefits. But I think organizations like ASEAN succeed when individual members take advantage of the opportunities to pursue national reforms. At the end of the day, it will be a national issue that works strongest in producing the reactions in dealing with digitization, both in terms of preparing for it and dealing with the negative fallouts. So if countries can use their membership of ASEAN and all the important programs that they are putting forward to push national reforms further at home, then I think we will find that digitization will be delivering the kinds of benefits it can, while minimizing the negative impacts on inequality and security and other concerns. So one should leverage the other to achieve what we hope to achieve. Let me stop there.
Thank you. And last but not least, Bapa or Mr. Sam Chung Chin Chin, what do you think is the role of private sector, including Huawei, in this digital ecosystem?
Actually, we have a very promising vision for the future of digital Asian for the next 10 years. And I think that last point I want to bring here is for the deeper digital transformation, it will be a multi-stakeholder approach. We'll collaborate with the government, academics, and within the industry or cross sectors. They need to be collaborate together to be have a kind of a single or maybe a blueprint for the future that could be good. That's my last words. Thank you.
Thank you. So to summarize our discussion today, basically ASEAN is an economic powerhouse, and of course digital economy has and will play an important role in the trajectory forward, including in navigating difficult times such as the crisis presented by COVID-19 pandemic. There is a lot of investments that need to be made, including in regulatory reforms, including in making sure that human resources are up to speed and there's good labor mobility across different regions, making sure that divide or inequality is addressed, and the physical infrastructure as well is ready. And of course, the public sector will not be able to do it alone, and therefore it is important and critical for private sector to contribute. And Huawei, as one of the leading ICT company, provider of infrastructure and smart devices, play important role in achieving ASEAN's vision for stronger connectivity and to tap into the benefits of regional economy. With that, let me thank all panelists for a very interesting discussion today, very insightful discussion today. I would like to also thank Foreign Policy Community Indonesia, FPCI, and Huawei as our co-hosts for the discussion today. And let me express my apologies if there are any lapses in moderating the session. And let me also convey the most important announcement from the organizing committee in this 2-hour discussion. Let me invite everyone to turn on their videos for a group photo session. So can the organizing committee please help me in do the counting for the photo session? Or should I do that?
Okay. On 3, 2, 1. Once again, on 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, thank you everyone for tuning in, and let me return the floor to our Master of Ceremony.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dayu, for moderating such an interactive and fruitful discussion. We would also like to thank our distinguished panelists for today for sharing your valuable insights. On behalf of FPCI, we thank Huawei Indonesia as our partner in organizing this forum. And last but not least, to all the panelists, thank you for tuning in. We hope you found the discussion useful. Don't forget to follow our social media at FPC Indo to keep updated on our upcoming events. Thank you and stay safe.